I arrived at the airport to travel with my daughter and son-in-law. Suddenly, a man grabbed my arm and whispered, "Pretend I'm arresting you. Your life depends on it." I thought he was crazy, but when he held up his FBI badge, my heart stopped. Behind me, my daughter called out, "Mom, what's going on?" He led me through a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Then he said the words that shattered my world. "I'm grateful you're here today. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far this community reaches." As you listen, ask yourself, if you were in her position, what would you do? Share your thoughts below. Quick note, this story includes dramatized elements for storytelling and reflection. Any resemblance to real names or events is purely coincidental, but the message is worth considering. I was standing in the TSA security line at San Francisco International Airport at 6 in the morning, flanked by my daughter Jessica and her husband Brandon, when a man in a dark suit grabbed my arm. The terminal buzzed with early travelers, business people clutching coffee families, corralling sleepy children, the endless beep of boarding passes being scanned. I'd been going over our itinerary in my head, thinking about the hotels in Honolulu, the beaches Robert had always wanted to see. Then everything stopped. "Mrs. Thompson," the man said quietly, his voice low and urgent. "Pretend I'm arresting you. Your life depends on it." Before I could react, he flashed a badge, Federal Bureau of Investigation Agent Torres, and led me away from the crowd. Jessica called after me, her voice rising in alarm. Mom, what's going on?" I turned to look at her. My 35-year-old daughter stood there in designer athleisure, her face a picture of confusion and concern. Brandon put a hand on her shoulder, his expression unreadable. "It's all right," Agent Torres said smoothly to them. "Just routine security. She'll be back shortly." He guided me through a side door marked "Authorized Personnel Only" and down a gray corridor that smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. My heart pounded. We ended up in a windowless office with 2 metal chairs and a table bolted to the floor. "Sit down, please," he said, and his tone had shifted from urgent to grim. "What is this about?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "I haven't done anything wrong." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said the words that shattered my world. "Your daughter tried to end your life, Mrs. Thompson." I stared at him. The room seemed to tilt. "That's impossible." "I wish it were," he said quietly. "We've had you under surveillance for 72 hours. We have evidence." I couldn't breathe. Jessica. My Jessica. "My name is Margaret Thompson. I'm 62 years old, and I've spent the last 30 years building Thompson's Bakery and Cafe from a single storefront in the Mission District into a chain of 5 locations across the Bay Area. 16-hour days, flour dust in my hair, dough under my fingernails. It was everything to me until my husband Robert had a stroke and passed away a year ago, just 2 months before we were supposed to retire. Robert had been my partner in every sense of the word. We dreamed of traveling the world together. Hawaii was supposed to be our first stop. Instead, I scattered his ashes alone in the ocean off Half Moon Bay. I remembered standing on that cold beach wind, whipping my hair, the urn heavy in my hands. I'd promised him I'd still make that trip. I'd promised I'd try to repair things with Jessica. For years, Jessica and I had been estranged. She left home at 18, married Brandon at 25, and over the next decade, our relationship withered into awkward holiday phone calls. But after Robert died, she reached out. She visited more. She asked about the bakeries, about me, about my health. She suggested we finally take that trip to Hawaii, the one her father and I had planned. "Mom," she'd said 3 weeks ago, her eyes soft and earnest. "Dad would have wanted us to heal. Let's go together. You, me, and Brandon, a fresh start." I'd been so grateful, so hopeful. But 6 months before he passed, Robert had pulled me aside one evening and said something I didn't want to hear. "Margaret, I'm worried about Jessica. She's changed. I don't trust Brandon. I think they're having money troubles. Be careful." I dismissed it. Robert was stressed. He was sick. He was imagining things. "You're being paranoid," I told him, squeezing his hand. "Jessica's finally coming around. We're going to be a family again." He'd looked at me with those tired eyes and said, "I hope you're right, but please just be careful with your accounts, with your will. Don't sign anything without reading it carefully." Now, sitting across from Agent Torres in that cold little room, I realized I should have listened. "Show me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Agent Torres reached for a laptop on the table and turned it toward me. The screen flickered to life, showing a grainy black and white surveillance feed. "This was recorded this morning," he said, "at 5:43 a.m. in your kitchen." I leaned forward, my hands trembling. "What you're about to see," he said quietly, "is going to change everything you believe about your daughter." The video began to play. The timestamp on the screen read 7:23 a.m. 40 minutes ago. I watched myself walk toward the restroom, leaving my chamomile tea on the coffee table. The moment I disappeared from view, Jessica's expression changed. She glanced toward the hallway, pulled a small vial from her handbag, and unscrewed the cap. Her hands moved quickly, deliberately. She poured white powder into my tea, while Brandon stepped between her and the smoke detector in the corner, blocking the camera angle. Jessica used my straw to stir until the powder dissolved. "Are you sure about this?" Brandon's voice came through faintly. Jessica zipped her bag. "It's the only way. By tonight we'll be free. Mom will be at peace with Dad." Her voice was calm, almost loving. I thought I was going to be sick. Agent Torres paused the video. "Mrs. Thompson, I know this is..." "What was in that vial?" My voice shook. He pulled up a lab report. "A high-dose respiratory suppressant, modified prescription grade. At sea level, it would make you drowsy. But at 35,000 feet in a pressurized cabin, it triggers respiratory failure within 90 minutes. Respiratory failure." The words felt like stones in my mouth. "It would look exactly like a stroke, Mrs. Thompson, just like your husband." They hadn't just planned to harm me, they'd planned to make it look natural, to make it look like I'd followed Robert. "How did you know to watch them?" I whispered. 3 days ago, a former bakery employee contacted our financial crimes unit. She witnessed Jessica forging your signature on business documents. We opened an investigation, installed surveillance, and monitored their communications. "What communications?" "Text messages, encrypted apps, calls to people we've been tracking." He paused. "Your daughter and son-in-law are deeply in debt to organized crime. We're still investigating the exact amount, but the messages show desperation threats, deadlines, plans to access your estate." "How much do they owe?" "We don't have a precise figure yet," Agent Torres said carefully, "but based on the tone, it's enough to make them willing to do this. Enough to make them willing to end my life." "What happens now?" "Two options," Agent Torres said. "One, we arrest them right now and go to trial with what we have, video-intercepted substance-forged documents. But a defense attorney will argue circumstantial evidence. They'll claim the vial was someone else's, that it was a mistake. And option two, you get on that plane," he said quietly. "We equip you with a wired GPS tracker and emergency beacon. You go to Hawaii, you let them try again." My pulse hammered. "You want me to give them another chance?" "When they make a second attempt, no jury will acquit them. We'll have intent pattern and them on tape with nowhere to hide. And if they succeed before you stop them..." A woman in a dark suit stepped into the room, sharp eyes, calm presence. "I'm Agent Davis. I'll be undercover on your flight and in Hawaii. You won't see me, but I'll be within 10 feet of you at all times. We will not let anything happen to you, Mrs. Thompson." 20 minutes later, FBI technicians fitted me with a micro GPS tracker sewn into my jacket, lining a panic button, disguised as a necklace pendant, and a recording device clipped inside my collar. Agent Torres walked me to the door. "If you board that plane, you're putting your life in our hands. But it's the only way to make sure they never try this again." I took a deep breath. In 1 hour, I would sit across from my daughter, knowing she had just tried to end my life. Jessica rushed toward me the moment I appeared at the gate, her face a perfect mask of concern. "Mom, are you okay?" What did they want? We were so worried. Around us, passengers lined up for boarding, oblivious to the drama unfolding. A mother struggled with a stroller. A businessman argued on his phone. Gate agents checked boarding passes with mechanical efficiency. I forced a smile and played my part. Just routine security questions, nothing to worry about. Brandon stepped closer, his eyes sharp, studying my face for any sign of what had just happened. "Did they search your bag?" "They asked a few questions about our trip," I said smoothly, keeping my voice light. "That's all." Jessica reached for my hand and squeezed it, her grip just a little too tight. "I'm just so relieved." Come sit down, you must be exhausted. She guided me back to our seats near the gate and picked up the cup of chamomile tea from the table where I'd left it an hour ago. Your tea is still here, Mom. You should drink it before we board. She held it out to me, her smile warm and encouraging, her eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I took the cup. My fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from rage. I raised it to my lips and saw Jessica lean forward, watching intently, her breathing shallow. At the last second, I coughed. My throat feels a little scratchy. I think I'll skip the tea. I walked to the trash bin near the gate and poured the entire cup into it. The liquid splashed against the plastic liner. I watched every drop disappear. When I turned back, I caught the look that passed between Jessica and Brandon. Disappointment, panic, and something else. Calculation. Jessica's jaw tightened. Brandon's hand clenched into a fist, then slowly relaxed. 20 minutes later, we boarded. The flight attendant greeting passengers at the aircraft door was a woman in her mid-30s, with dark hair pulled into a neat bun. Her name tag read Michelle. As I passed, she gave me the smallest nod, so brief that if I hadn't been looking for it, I would have missed it. Another FBI agent. Our seats were in business class. Jessica sat beside me in the window seat. Brandon sat across the aisle in a single seat. The cabin configuration was 1-2-1, with privacy pods separating each row. I settled into my seat, the leather cool against my back. The cabin smelled like recycled air and expensive cologne. Flight attendants moved through the aisles, stowing bags, checking seatbelts, their choreographed efficiency, oddly comforting. 3 rows behind us, I spotted Agent Davis. She wore oversized glasses, a tailored blazer, and had her laptop open. She looked exactly like a corporate consultant heading to a work trip. Our eyes met for half a second, and she returned to her screen. I buckled my seatbelt and tried to breathe normally. The pendant around my neck, the panic button, felt heavy against my chest. Jessica pulled out her phone to switch it to airplane mode, and I caught a glimpse of a text message on her screen before she locked it. 3 weeks left, final warning. 3 weeks, a deadline. My stomach turned. The engines roared to life and the plane began to taxi toward the runway. Jessica reached over and took my hand. Mom, she said softly, I'm so glad we're doing this trip. It's what Dad would have wanted. You and me finally healing. I looked into my daughter's eyes that looked so much like Robert's, and saw a stranger. I'm glad too, sweetheart, I whispered. Behind us, I heard Brandon lean across the aisle toward Jessica. His voice was low, but the recording device clipped inside my collar picked up every word. If this doesn't work, we move to Plan B tomorrow. No more chances. Jessica's reply was barely audible. It will work. It has to. The plane lifted off the runway, climbing steeply into the morning sky. I felt the pressure change in my ears as we ascended 10,000 feet, 20,000, 30,000. I glanced out the window. San Francisco Bay stretched below us, glittering in the sunlight, growing smaller and smaller. I was trapped in a metal tube at 35,000 feet with 2 people who wanted me gone. The next 5 hours would determine whether I lived to see Hawaii. The first attempt came 30 minutes into the flight during beverage service. The cabin hummed with the usual sounds, engines, the rattle of the drink cart passengers chatting. I sat by the window in business class, Jessica beside me, Brandon across the aisle. Everything looked normal, a routine flight to paradise. Except nothing was normal. Jessica smiled at the flight attendant, Michelle, the FBI agent I'd met at the door, and said, My mother would like a mimosa. She gets a little anxious when she flies. I cut her off immediately. Actually, I'll just have water. Bottled sealed, please. Jessica's smile faltered. Mom, we're on vacation. Live a little. You know I don't drink alcohol on flights, sweetheart, I said firmly. Michelle brought me an unopened bottle of water. I cracked the seal myself and took a sip, watching Jessica's jaw tighten. Her eyes followed the bottle as I set it in the seat pocket, well out of her reach. The second attempt came an hour later. Jessica ordered lunch for both of us without asking, a chicken Caesar salad and coffee for me. When the tray arrived, I watched as she reached across to hand it to me. Her fingers brushed across my plate, lingering just a fraction too long over the lettuce. I'm not feeling well, I said, pushing the tray away. My stomach is upset. Jessica's frustration leaked through. Mom, you need to eat something. You're going to be weak. I'll eat when we land, I replied and closed my eyes. I didn't sleep, I listened. I heard Jessica shift beside me, heard the rustle of her purse, heard Brandon's foot tapping anxiously across the aisle. Around us, other passengers dozed or watched movies, completely unaware of what was unfolding in row 12. The third attempt came 2 hours in. I returned from the restroom to find a steaming cup of chamomile tea on my tray table. "The flight attendant left it for you," Jessica said brightly. "I told her you love chamomile." I picked up the cup and examined the tea bag wrapper beside it. The seal had been torn open, not factory torn, but manually open, the edges slightly crumpled. "Too many herbs make me jittery," I said, setting it down untouched. Jessica's voice turned sharp. "You're being ridiculous, Mom." "Maybe," I said, "but I know what I like." Brandon leaned across the aisle. "Mrs. Thompson, would you like some gum? Helps with the cabin pressure." "No, thank you." Jessica tried again 20 minutes later. "Mom, I brought your allergy medicine. You left it on the counter this morning. I grabbed it for you." She held out a small pill and a bottle of water. I looked at the pill. It was round and white, but my allergy medication was oblong and pale yellow. "I already took one before we left," I lied. Her hand trembled as she put the pill back in her bag. I saw panic flash across her face. 3 hours into the flight, I watched Jessica check her phone obsessively. Every few minutes, she'd pull it out, stare at the screen, her face growing paler. Her breathing was shallow, almost gasping. She leaned toward Brandon and whispered urgently, "She's not cooperating. Nothing is working." Brandon pulled out his phone, typed something, and showed her the screen. Jessica read it, and the color drained from her face completely. She typed a reply with shaking fingers. I couldn't see the words, but I saw Brandon's response. He typed, "Then tomorrow, the cliffs. No other choice." My heart hammered. The cliffs. What cliffs? 4 hours in, Jessica made one last attempt, her voice breaking. "Mom, please. Just drink something. I'm worried about you." For a brief moment, I saw the little girl who used to beg me to come watch her soccer games, the girl who cried in my arms after her first heartbreak, the daughter I thought I knew. But then I remembered the vial, the powder, the calculation in her eyes. "I'm fine, Jessica," I said quietly. She turned away and stared out the window at the endless blue ocean below. When the captain announced our descent into Honolulu, I glanced at Jessica. Her jaw was clenched, her hands balled into fists. Brandon's leg bounced nervously across the aisle. They had failed every attempt to harm me on this flight. And whatever they were planning for the cliffs would happen tomorrow. I didn't know which cliffs they meant, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. My daughter had not given up her intent to end my life. Hawaii was everything Robert had promised: turquoise water stretching to the horizon, warm tropical breezes carrying the sweet scent of plumeria, endless blue skies. Palm trees swayed along the coastline. Couples walked hand in hand on white sand beaches. It should have been paradise. Instead, I was arriving at what might become the place where my life ended. That afternoon, after landing in Honolulu, we took a taxi from the airport to our hotel in Waikiki. I pressed my face against the window and stared out at the sparkling Pacific Ocean. Surfers rode waves in the distance. Children built sandcastles. I thought about Robert's promise made 5 years ago. "When I retire Maggie, the first place we're going is Hawaii. Just you and me." He died 2 months before retirement. Now I was here with the daughter who wanted me gone. We checked into a beachfront hotel overlooking Diamond Head Crater. The lobby smelled like fresh orchids and coconut. Tourists in bright Hawaiian shirts laughed and took photos, completely unaware that the woman standing among them was wearing a wire. The receptionist behind the front desk was in his late 20s with a name tag that read Jason. He processed our reservation efficiently. "Welcome to Hawaii, Mrs. Thompson," he said, handing me my room key card. As he did, he slipped a small folded note beneath the card sleeve. I palmed it discreetly and tucked it into my pocket. Jessica stepped up beside me. "Mom, let's get adjoining rooms. That way we can spend more time together." "That sounds perfect, sweetheart," I said. Brandon nodded. "We want to make sure you're comfortable, Mrs. Thompson." Once we dropped our luggage in our rooms, Jessica knocked on my door. She wore a yellow sundress and sandals, looking relaxed and happy. "Mom, I've been researching things to do," she said brightly. "Tomorrow, let's drive out to Makapu'u Point Lookout on the east side of the island. The sea cliff views are supposed to be incredible. Dad would have absolutely loved it there." My blood turned to ice. The cliffs. This was plan B. I forced myself to smile. That sounds beautiful, honey. I'd love to see it. Brandon appeared behind her. It's only about 30 minutes from here. The lighthouse trail is an easy walk and there are amazing photo opportunities at the top. I can't wait, I said, keeping my voice enthusiastic. After they left, I unfolded the note Jason had given me. We're watching, you're safe. That evening, alone in my room, my phone buzzed. Video call from Agent Torres. Mrs. Thompson, he said without preamble, we intercepted Brandon's internet search history from last night. He searched for fatal falls at Makapuu Point, tourist accidents at Hawaii cliffs, and how to make a fall look accidental. My hands started shaking. They're planning to push me off. Makapuu has sea cliffs that drop 600 feet straight down into the Pacific Ocean, Torres said grimly. It's a popular tourist destination, lots of witnesses, which means they can argue it was a tragic accident. What do we do? Agent Davis will be positioned there tomorrow, posing as a travel photographer. Hawaiian police officers will be nearby in civilian clothing. You'll wear your panic button. The second they make a move, we'll have them. What if I actually fall before you can stop them? Torres's expression softened. You won't fall, Mrs. Thompson. We'll be within 30 feet of you at every moment. Multiple agents will have eyes on you the entire time. I give you my word. After the call ended, I stood on my balcony and watched the sun sink into the Pacific. The sky turned shades of gold and coral and deep violet, one of the most beautiful sunsets I'd ever seen. Below on the beach, I spotted Jessica and Brandon. They were arguing. I could see Jessica's hands moving in sharp, angry gestures. Her voice drifted up on the wind. Tomorrow at Makapuu, it has to work this time. We're out of time. Brandon grabbed her arm. She yanked it away. They stood facing each other for a long moment, silhouettes against the dying light, then walked back toward the hotel without speaking. I stepped inside and locked the balcony door. That night, I barely closed my eyes. I kept picturing myself standing at the edge of a 600-foot drop with my daughter's hands pressing against my back. I kept remembering Robert's warning from 6 months before his stroke. Maggie, if anything happens to me, be careful with Jessica and Brandon. They're in serious trouble. Don't let them use your love as a weapon against you. Tomorrow, I would discover just how much trouble they were really in. The trail to Makapuu Point Lookout should have been one of the most beautiful hikes in Hawaii, a gentle paved path winding along dramatic sea cliffs, leading to breathtaking ocean views that drew thousands of tourists each year. For me, it was a 600-foot walk toward my daughter's second attempt to end my life. We left the hotel at 10 in the morning. Brandon drove the rental car along the southeastern coast past pristine beaches and swaying palm trees, while I sat in the back seat watching the turquoise water flash past my window. The GPS announced turns in a cheerful voice. Other cars filled with vacationers drove alongside us, everyone heading toward their own perfect Hawaiian day. The morning was perfect. Brilliant sunshine, cloudless blue sky, gentle breeze carrying the scent of ocean salt and tropical flowers. Jessica kept up cheerful conversation from the passenger seat. Mom, I'm so glad we're doing this. Dad would be so happy we're finally spending time together. I watched her in the rearview mirror and wondered how she could sound so calm, so normal, knowing what she was planning. We arrived at the Makapuu Point parking lot and blended into the crowd of tourists' families with children in sun hats, couples taking selfies against the ocean backdrop, serious hikers in athletic gear consulting trail maps. I spotted Agent Davis immediately. She wore hiking clothes and carried a professional camera with a telephoto lens, looking exactly like a travel photographer scouting locations for a magazine shoot. The trail wound upward along the cliff edge, the pavement hot beneath our feet. With every step, the drop to the ocean below became more dramatic. Waves crashed against black lava rocks 600 feet down, sending up white spray that caught the sunlight like diamonds. The view was stunning, endless blue ocean stretching to the horizon, distant islands floating like mirages, humpback whales breaching. In the distance, their massive bodies arcing through the air. Robert would have loved this place. I could almost hear his voice. Look at that Maggie, isn't it magnificent? Brandon walked ahead, stopping frequently to take photos with his phone. Let me get a picture of you two. Stand near the railing. Jessica took my hand. Her palm was sweating and led me toward the viewing area where the path ended at a low metal railing. Beyond that railing, nothing but air and a 600-foot drop onto jagged lava rocks that jutted from the churning surf like broken teeth. A group of tourists moved away, laughing about something, leaving our area temporarily isolated. Jessica positioned me with my back to the railing. Perfect spot, Mom. The light is beautiful. I felt the metal bar press against my lower back. I could feel the void behind me pulling at me like gravity itself. Brandon raised his phone. Smile moved closer together. Jessica stepped beside me and put her arm around my shoulders. To anyone watching from a distance, we looked like a loving mother and daughter posing for a vacation photo. Her grip on my shoulder tightened, fingers digging in. She leaned close and whispered directly into my ear, "I'm sorry, Mom, but Dad wanted you with him. You've been so sad. This is mercy." Her hand pressed hard against my back. I felt myself tilting backward into empty space, my weight shifting over the railing. The ocean roared below. I grabbed for her arm, but she was pushing, not pulling. Her face twisted with something between determination and despair. Time slowed. I saw the rocks below, felt the wind tearing at my clothes, heard the waves, saw a seabird wheel past. Then, freeze, FB, I step away from her. Agent Davis rushed forward from her photographer position 30 feet away, weapon-drawn badge raised high. 2 officers in civilian clothes appeared from the trail. Officer Sullivan, a broad-shouldered man in his 40s, and Officer Reynolds, a woman with sharp eyes and quick movements. Jessica's hand jerked away from my back as if burned. I stumbled forward onto solid ground, my knees buckling. I fell onto the hot pavement, gasping. Jessica immediately dropped beside me. "Mom, you almost fell. I was pulling you back." Tears poured down her face, an Oscar-worthy performance. Brandon stopped recording, lowering his phone. "Officers, what's going on?" She nearly fell. We were just taking pictures. Agent Davis stepped forward, her voice cold and professional. "We have audio, Miss Mitchell. This is Mercy." That doesn't sound like pulling someone to safety. Jessica's face crumbled. "No, you don't understand." Brandon tried to run. Officer Sullivan and Officer Reynolds tackled him within 10 feet, driving him face first into the trail. I sat on the ground shaking, watching my daughter being handcuffed. Jessica collapsed in front of me, hands still cuffed behind her back, makeup smeared with tears and dust. "Mom, please tell them it was an accident, please." But I looked at her and saw only desperation at being caught, not remorse for trying to harm me. Agent Davis helped me to my feet, her grip steady and strong. "Mrs. Thompson, we can arrest them right now. We have audio-video witnesses. But their lawyers will argue misunderstanding that you lost your balance. Or you can continue. Let them try one more time. Then no jury will acquit them." I should have ended it at Makapu. I should have let them arrest Jessica and Brandon on those cliffs and finish this nightmare right there with the ocean crashing below and the evidence overwhelming. But I needed to understand why my own daughter wanted me gone so desperately that she'd tried twice in 24 hours. The Hawaiian police released Jessica and Brandon with stern warnings. Part of the FBI planned to let them incriminate themselves further. We drove back to the hotel in tense silence. Brandon gripped the steering wheel too tightly. Jessica stared out the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Once we arrived, I called them to my room. They entered nervously, moving like prisoners walking to judgment. Jessica's eyes were red and swollen from crying. I stood by the window overlooking the ocean, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the room. I spoke without turning around. "You just tried to push me off a 600-foot cliff." Jessica's voice trembled. "Mom, no, it wasn't like that. You lost your balance." I spun to face her, and the movement was sharp enough that she flinched. Don't lie anymore. I heard what you said. This is Mercy. Dad wanted you with him. You tried to end my life." The mask cracked. Jessica collapsed onto the sofa, hands shaking violently. "Mom, we're desperate. We owe money to very dangerous people." I kept my voice deliberately calm, though fury burned in my chest. "How much?" She shook her head, tears starting fresh. I can't tell you. If they knew we talked, Mom, you don't understand. These aren't normal creditors." Brandon stepped forward, his face pale and drawn. Mrs. Thompson, they send us photos. Photos of what they do to people who don't pay. Severed fingers. Bodies dumped. His voice broke and he couldn't finish. I felt rage rising like a wave. So you decided ending my life was easier than asking your own mother for help. Jessica's voice rose defensive and desperate. You don't understand. You have everything. The bakeries, the house, Dad's life insurance. We have nothing but debt, crushing us every single day. I shouted back, years of hurt pouring out. I built those bakeries with my own hands. Your father and I worked 16-hour days, missed birthdays and holidays, sacrificed everything so you could have opportunities we never had. Jessica stood, tears streaming down her face, her voice breaking. I know, and you never let me forget it. Every conversation always about how hard you worked, how much you gave up for me. Like I owed you my entire life for being born. The room fell silent except for her sobbing and the distant sound of traffic below. Brandon tried one more time, his voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Thompson, we've made terrible mistakes. I held up my hand. Get out, both of you. I can't even look at you right now. Jessica reached toward me, her hand extended like a plea. Mom, please, get out. My voice was sharp enough that they both flinched backward. They left. Jessica looked back with desperate eyes before Brandon pulled her through the doorway. The moment the door closed, I collapsed onto the bed, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. My phone buzzed. Agent Torres. Mrs. Thompson, are you all right? We had audio from your room. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand. I'm fine. What happens next? His voice turned grim. They've made their next move. We intercepted communications on the dark web. They've hired 2 local contractors. $50,000, half paid up front via cryptocurrency. My stomach twisted into a knot. What do you mean, hired? 2 men, Mrs. Thompson. Instructions make it look like a tourist incident, a robbery gone wrong. Location, Waikiki Beach, tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. Tomorrow night. My voice came out as a whisper. They're running out of time. The people they owe are closing in. This is their last desperate attempt. What do? We'll have undercover agents positioned across the beach, snipers on rooftops. The moment these men approach you, we take them down. And when we trace the cryptocurrency payment back to Brandon's account, we'll have ironclad evidence of conspiracy. What if something goes wrong? Nothing will go wrong, Torres said firmly. You'll be surrounded by protection you can't see. Trust me, Mrs. Thompson. After Torres hung up, I sat in the darkened hotel room staring down at the lights of Waikiki Beach twinkling like false promises. Tomorrow night, 2 strangers would approach me on that beach while tourists strolled past. And somewhere in this hotel, my daughter, my only child, was paying them to carry out what she couldn't. I thought about Robert, about the family I thought we had. It was all a lie. Tomorrow night, that lie would end in justice or in my life ending on that sand. The next morning, I woke to a text message that made my blood run cold. Contact established, tonight 8 p.m. 2 local contractors confirmed. Be ready. I sat on the hotel bed, early morning light filtering through the curtains, and read through Agent Torres's full briefing with trembling hands. The hired contractors, 1 local Hawaiian man in his 30s with a criminal record for assault, 1 mainland thug with ties to organized crime networks. Payment $50,000 in cryptocurrency, half already transferred to an untraceable wallet. Method close-range attack staged as a failed robbery that went wrong. FBI plan. I would take an evening walk on Waikiki Beach, wearing protective gear beneath my jacket. Sharpshooters positioned on hotel rooftops. Undercover agents scattered throughout the crowd. Response time under 30 seconds. Torres's message ended. If anything feels wrong, press the panic beacon. We're 30 seconds away. You will not be harmed tonight, Mrs. Thompson. I promise. That morning, day 2, in Hawaii, I forced myself to act normal to play the role of carefree tourist one last time. Breakfast at the hotel restaurant with Jessica and Brandon. We sat at a table overlooking the pool, surrounded by families on vacation. A child shrieked with laughter nearby. Servers moved between tables with coffee pots and fruit plates. We talked about nothing, the weather, how beautiful the island was, what we might do today. Every word felt hollow, like actors reading lines in a play none of us wanted to perform. Jessica spread jam on her toast with mechanical precision. "Mom, what do you want to do today?" I shrugged, forcing brightness into my voice. "Maybe some shopping. I'd like to pick up souvenirs for the bakery staff." Mid-morning, we wandered through tourist shops in Waikiki, weaving between racks of Hawaiian shirts and displays of shell necklaces. I bought a postcard of the beach at sunset, one I knew I'd never send. Jessica bought a silver bracelet with a plumeria flower design, admiring it in the mirror. "What do you think, Mom, pretty?" I watched her smile at her reflection, knowing she'd never wear that bracelet outside a prison cell. Lunch at a beachside cafe with open walls and ceiling fans slowly turning overhead. Brandon couldn't stop checking his phone. His fingers trembled every time a message came through. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the ocean breeze. I wondered if he was texting the men he'd hired to end my life. Confirming details. Timing method. Final payment instructions. Every moment felt like theater, all of us playing roles waiting for night to fall. Late afternoon, back in my room, I met with FBI technicians who'd entered through a service entrance. They fitted me with a protective vest, thin, flexible, designed to stop close-range attacks without being visible under clothing. The panic beacon was disguised as a bracelet on my wrist, identical to the silver one Jessica had bought. Agent Davis reviewed the plan one more time, her voice calm and professional. "You'll walk the beach around 7:45. We'll be everywhere, you just won't see us." At 6 o'clock, I told Jessica and Brandon, "Tonight I want to walk the beach alone. I need time with memories of your father, just me and the ocean." Jessica's face showed concern, real or fake, I couldn't tell anymore. "Are you sure, Mom? It's not safe to walk alone after dark. There have been incidents, robberies." The irony of her warning me about robberies would have been funny if it weren't so horrifying. I smiled. "I'll be fine, sweetheart, just a short walk. I need this." Brandon added quickly, "We have dinner reservations at 7:30 anyway. That new restaurant you wanted to try, Jess." Perfect alibis they'd be in a crowded restaurant with witnesses while hired contractors attacked me. At 7:45, I stood at the edge of my hotel room looking at myself in the mirror. 62 years old, wearing body armor under a light jacket because my daughter wanted me gone. When had my life become a crime thriller? I stepped onto Waikiki Beach at exactly 7:45. The sunset painted the sky orange and pink, breathtakingly beautiful. Couples walked hand in hand. Children built sandcastles. Tourists took photos of the fading light. Everything looked peaceful and perfect. But somewhere in this crowd of happy vacationers, two men were being paid $50,000 to attack me and leave me on the sand while they fled with my purse. I took a deep breath and began to walk. If you're still here with me at this moment, comment, "I'm still here," so I know you're walking through this with me. And tell me honestly, if you were in my place knowing two men were waiting on that beach, would you still take that step forward? Or would you turn back and save yourself? I'm about to walk into the night. And one more thing, the next part of this story includes dramatized elements created for storytelling and reflection. Some details may not reflect real events. If this isn't for you, this is the moment to step away. The beach was crowded with tourists watching the sunset, but I wasn't looking at the sky. I was watching faces searching for the men my daughter had hired to harm me. Every stranger who glanced my way could be one of them. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might stop before the contractors even found me. I walked slowly along the shore, waves washing over my feet, trying to look like any other tourist. Families packed up beach toys. Couples took sunset selfies. Vendors sold shaved ice. Everything looked normal, except nothing was normal. Behind me, about 50 feet back, I spotted two men. One was Hawaiian, early 30s, wearing a tank top and board shorts blending perfectly with the beach crowd. The other was older, maybe 40, with a mainland build, wearing an ill-fitting tourist t-shirt. They were following me. I watched their reflection in a shop window. The Hawaiian man spoke into his phone. Target confirmed, blue dress, gray hair, walking alone. My mouth went dry. I kept walking, following the FBI plan, heading toward a less crowded area near Diamond Head. The sun was setting fast, shadows lengthened. Families with young children headed toward hotels. The two men maintained their distance but matched my pace. I reached a quieter stretch where fewer people lingered. My hand moved toward the panic beacon bracelet. Footsteps quickened behind me. "Hey lady," the Hawaiian man's voice. I turned around. Both men approached quickly. The older man's hand was inside his waistband. "Give me the bag," the Hawaiian man demanded, stepping closer. I backed up, playing my rehearsed role. "Take it, don't hurt me." I held out my purse with trembling hands. The mainland thug grabbed it, but instead of running, he stepped closer. His voice was low cold. "Orders are orders, lady. Sorry." His hand came out of his waistband, holding a blade. Time seemed to slow. He raised it. I saw the sunset reflecting off the metal, heard the waves crashing, felt the wind. My finger pressed hard on the panic beacon. The mainland thug lunged forward, the blade aimed at my chest. I stumbled backward onto the sand. "FB, I dropped the weapon, drop it now." Floodlights blazed from nowhere. 6 agents and Hawaiian police officers emerged from the crowd. The Hawaiian man bolted, making it 20 feet before Agent Davis tackled him to the ground. The mainland thug didn't drop the blade, he kept coming toward me, weapon raised. Crack! A sharp gunshot split the air. The man spun and fell, struck in the shoulder by a rooftop sniper. The blade dropped onto the sand, inches from my face. He clutched his wounded shoulder, screaming, "You shot me!" Agents swarmed, both men weapons drawn. "Someone help me to my feet, Agent Torres." "Mrs. Thompson, are you hurt? Did he strike you?" I looked down. My jacket had a slash where the blade had grazed the protective vest. If I hadn't been wearing it, the blade would have reached my chest. The Hawaiian man, now handcuffed, yelled out, "We want a deal. We'll tell you everything. We have messages." Torres approached. "Show me." The Hawaiian man's phone was unlocked using facial recognition before he was cuffed. Torres scrolled through it, his face hardening. He held the phone out to me. Text messages from an encrypted number marked JTM, Jessica Thompson Mitchell. My hands shook as I read. "Target Margaret Thompson, 62, white female, gray hair, wearing blue dress tonight. Make it look like a robbery. Take the gold necklace and phone to sell it. 50,000 crypto, now 50,000 after completion." An attached photo, a picture of me from yesterday taken at our hotel. Jessica had sent these strangers a photograph of me to help them identify me so they could carry out the plan. I sank onto the sand, still clutching my slash jacket, staring at the photo of myself that my daughter had sent to hired contractors. Around me, tourists gathered, phones raised, filming the arrest. Police sirens wailed. The sunset had faded to darkness. And somewhere in a restaurant less than a mile away, Jessica and Brandon were probably receiving word that their plan had failed again, and this time there was no way to lie their way out of it. 20 minutes later, I walked into an upscale restaurant in downtown Honolulu with FBI agents flanking me on both sides. Through the window, I could see my daughter and son-in-law at a corner table, laughing over wine glasses, celebrating what they thought was my being gone. The manager tried to stop us. "Ma'am, this is a private dining area." Agent Torres flashed his badge. "FBI, step aside." We walked past stunned diners toward their table. Jessica had her back to the entrance, sipping champagne. Brandon faced our direction. He saw us first. His wine glass froze midway to his lips. The color drained from his face completely. "By now it should be done," I heard him say to Jessica. "We should be getting confirmation any—" Then he saw me. His mouth opened. No sound came out. Jessica noticed his expression and turned around. The champagne flute slipped from her fingers. It shattered on the table wine spreading across the white tablecloth. "Mom!" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Mom, you're alive." I walked to their table, still wearing my slash jacket, sand still clinging to my shoes. The entire restaurant fell silent. Every eye turned toward us. "Hello, Jessica." She shot to her feet, knocking over her chair. "Mom, what happened? Are you hurt? What's going on?" Brandon tried to stand, tried to run. 2 agents were already on him. They slammed him down right there, his face hitting the bread basket. Diners gasped. Phones came out, recording started. Jessica grabbed my arm. "Mom, what's happening? Why are they—" "Stop lying," I said quietly. "It's over." Agent Torres stepped forward. "Jessica Thompson Mitchell, Brandon Mitchell, you're under arrest for 3 counts of conspiracy to commit harm, attempted harm, and solicitation of harm for hire." Jessica's knees buckled. "What? No, Mom, tell them there's been some mistake." Torres continued reading their rights while another agent handcuffed her. I watched my daughter's face cycle through shock, denial, panic, and finally calculation. She looked straight at me, tears streaming. "Mom, please, you don't understand. We were desperate. They were going to harm us. We had no choice. I felt something cold settle in my chest. There's always a choice. You had 3 opportunities to choose differently. All 3 times you chose to harm me. But we're family, Jessica screamed as the agents began leading her away. You have to forgive family, Mom. You have to help us. I stood silent as they escorted both of them through the restaurant. Other diners recorded everything. This would flood social media within the hour. At the door, Jessica turned back. Mom, you'll bail us out, right? You'll hire lawyers, right? Mom. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and didn't see anything of the little girl I'd raised. Just a desperate woman who had tried to end my life 3 times. Brandon sobbed, Mrs. Thompson, please, we're sorry. We made mistakes, but please. A mistake is forgetting to call on a birthday. Hiring contractors to harm someone is something else entirely. I turned my back and walked out of the restaurant without answering. Behind me, Jessica's screams of Mom faded as the agents loaded her into a police car. I stood on the sidewalk watching blue lights reflect off the buildings and realized that for the first time in 35 years, I no longer had a daughter. She had destroyed that relationship more completely than she'd ever tried to destroy me. That night at 11 o'clock, I sat in a hotel conference room converted into an FBI interrogation space. Across the table was my daughter, hands cuffed, makeup smeared, designer outfit wrinkled. 2 cameras recorded everything. This would be our last conversation as mother and daughter. Agent Torres sat beside me. Ms. Mitchell, your husband is in the next room cooperating fully. He's telling us everything. This is your chance to tell your side. Jessica's shoulders collapsed. The fight was gone. What do you want to know? I leaned forward. Start with why. Why did you hate me enough to want me gone? She looked up, eyes red. I didn't hate you, Mom. I resented you. For the next hour, everything poured out. The resentment started in childhood. Every birthday party, every school play, every soccer game, you weren't there. Always at the bakery. Always working. I interrupted. I was building a future for you. You were building your dream. Jessica's voice shook. I never asked for those bakeries. I just wanted you at my soccer games like other kids' parents. Years of feeling like she owed me something. Every conversation was a reminder. Dad and I worked so hard for you. We sacrificed everything for your education, like I was a debt that could never be repaid. Then came Brandon. I met him 5 years ago, charming, successful, or so I thought. The gambling started small, fantasy sports betting, then online poker, then casinos. 3 years ago, Brandon started losing big. 2 years ago, they borrowed money to cover losses. 1 year ago, they borrowed from the wrong people. Loan sharks connected to organized crime in Miami. They fronted us the money. Brandon promised he'd win it back. He was so sure. Instead, he lost everything. Total debt, $890,000. We tried everything. Sold our cars, maxed credit cards, borrowed from friends. Nothing was enough. 6 months ago, the threats started. They sent photos of people who didn't pay, severed fingers, bodies in oil drums. They said Brandon first, then me. Deadline 3 weeks from when we landed in Hawaii. When Robert died, Jessica knew about the life insurance, the bakeries, the house. It was like a light bulb went on. To us, you were worth more gone than alive. Brandon planned it all. He researched for months. Respiratory suppressants that mimic strokes, effects of altitude, remote locations, making it look plausible. First attempt at the airport. I was terrified. My hands shook so badly pouring the powder into your tea. But Brandon kept saying, it's them or her. And I believed him. Makapu'u, standing on that cliff, putting my hands on your back, I almost couldn't do it. Kept thinking about you teaching me to bake when I was little, your hands guiding mine. Then Brandon texted 2 weeks left and I pushed. Hired contractors. That was all Brandon's idea. He found them on the dark web. I didn't want strangers involved, but we'd failed twice and time was running out. She broke down completely. I told myself you'd be happier with Dad, that you'd been so sad since he passed, that it was mercy. But it wasn't mercy. It was ending my life. I was going to harm my own mother for money. I asked the question haunting me. When did I stop being your mother and become an ATM machine? Jessica sobbed. I don't know. Somewhere between desperation and greed, you stopped being mom and started being $890,000. And I hate myself for that. Agent Torres stood. That's enough for tonight. We have everything we need for charges. Jessica looked at me across the table. What happens now? I stood slowly, exhausted to my bones. Now you learn that even family faces consequences. Even daughters who tried to harm their mothers. As I walked to the door, Jessica called after me. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm truly, truly sorry. I stopped at the door but didn't turn around. I know you're sorry, but sorry doesn't erase 3 attempts. Then I walked out, leaving my daughter crying in handcuffs. The next morning, I sat alone in the hotel business center, my laptop open to my bank account. $890,000. The number that had turned my daughter into someone who tried to harm me stared back from the screen. Agent Torres sat beside me. Mrs. Thompson, you don't owe them a single cent. I stared at the number. I know. Those loan sharks can't touch them in prison. The debt dies with their freedom. I know that too, but I kept thinking about Robert's voice. Family means you don't give up on them even when they've given up on themselves. And also, don't let them use your love as a weapon. Both were true. I could let Jessica and Brandon face the loan shark's revenge, even in prison. Organized crime has a long reach. Or I could do what I'd always done, protect my child, even from herself. I made my decision. Called my lawyer, set up an intermediary, transferred $890,000 to settle their debt completely. Every cent they'd been willing to harm me to get. The transfer took 2 hours to complete. When it was done, I had Jessica brought from the police holding area. She entered under FBI supervision, hands still cuffed, hope blooming on her face. Mom. I kept my voice calm. I paid your debt, $890,000. It's done. You and Brandon won't be harmed by the loan sharks. Jessica burst into tears. Thank you so much. I knew you wouldn't let them. I'm not finished, I interrupted. Her face froze. I've also contacted the FBI. You'll both be charged with 3 counts of conspiracy to commit harm, attempted harm, and solicitation of harm for hire. The color drained from her face. What? But you just paid our debt. I saved your lives, I said clearly. I didn't save you from justice. Brandon was brought in then. Mrs. Thompson, you paid, thank God. We'll pay you back every cent. I looked at him. You'll never pay me back because you'll both be in federal prison. His face went gray. But we'll be there for decades. Yes, you will. Jessica grabbed the table. Mom, you can't do this. We made mistakes, but we're family. I stood looking down at my daughter. You stopped being my family the moment you chose money over me. Now you're criminals who tried to harm someone, and that person is pressing charges. Agent Torres stepped forward. For the record, Mrs. Thompson is proceeding with all charges, 3 counts conspiracy to commit harm, attempted harm solicitation of harm for hire. Jessica's voice turned shrill. Mom, I'm begging you, please, we'll change, we'll get help. Please don't do this. I thought about the poison in the tea, the hands on my back at the cliff, the blade aimed at my chest. I do love you, Jessica. That's why I saved you from being harmed by loan sharks. But love doesn't mean protecting you from the consequences of trying to harm me. Your father would want me to protect you from dangerous people. He'd also want you to understand that actions have consequences. Brandon tried one last plea. We'll spend the rest of our lives in prison. We'll lose everything. I looked into his eyes. I almost lost my life 3 times because of choices you made. Now you'll live with your choices. Jessica screamed as they began leading her out. I'm your daughter. You have to love me no matter what. I answered quietly. I do love you. That's why I saved you from those people. But love doesn't mean enabling. It means holding you accountable. Maybe after 20 years in prison, you'll understand the difference. When the door closed behind them, I sat down at the laptop staring at my bank account, lighter by $890,000. But I could look at myself in the mirror. I'd saved my daughter's life, just not the way she wanted. Sometimes the hardest act of love is letting someone face the consequences of their choices. Robert would have understood that. I hope Jessica would someday. 6 months later, I sat in a San Francisco courtroom, my niece Emily beside me, holding my hand as the judge prepared to read the verdict. The trial had lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming video-audio testimony from the hired contractors' FBI surveillance. Finally, it was ending. The courtroom was packed with reporters, true crime followers, people who'd been tracking the case online. Jessica and Brandon sat at the defense table in prison jumpsuits, expensive lawyers beside them. Jessica had lost weight. Her hair was pulled back, simply no makeup, she looked like a stranger. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked over her reading glasses at the defendants. In the case of the People versus Jessica Thompson Mitchell, I held my breath. Count 1, conspiracy to commit harm by poison. The jury finds the defendant guilty. Jessica's head dropped. Count 2, conspiracy to commit harm by force. Guilty. Brandon closed his eyes. Count 3, solicitation of harm for hire. Guilty. Count 4, attempted harm. Guilty. For Brandon, additionally, Count 5, wire fraud and illegal online gambling. Guilty. The judge set down her papers. The evidence in this case is overwhelming. Surveillance cameras captured Ms. Mitchell poisoning her mother's drink. Audio recordings caught her attempting to push her mother off a 600-foot cliff. Text messages and cryptocurrency transactions proved both defendants hired contractors to attack the victim. She looked directly at Jessica. Ms. Mitchell, you didn't conspire against a stranger. You targeted your own mother, the woman who gave you life, raised you, sacrificed her dreams to give you opportunities. Your betrayal is profound. To Brandon, Mr. Mitchell, you manipulated your wife, weaponized her vulnerabilities, and orchestrated a plot that endangered an innocent woman. Sentencing. Given the premeditated nature of these crimes, the multiple attempts, the use of hired contractors, and the complete lack of remorse shown during trial, Jessica Thompson Mitchell, 24 years in federal prison, no parole eligibility for the first 12 years. Jessica gasped, tears streaming. Brandon Mitchell, 28 years in federal prison, no parole eligibility for the first 14 years. Brandon collapsed in his chair. The judge allowed victim impact statements. I stood and walked to the microphone. I'd written a speech but couldn't read it. I spoke from my heart. Your Honor, 6 months ago, I thought I was taking my daughter on a healing vacation. Instead, I was poisoned, nearly pushed off a cliff, and attacked by hired contractors. My daughter looked into my eyes and said, "This is mercy," before trying to end my life. Jessica was sobbing openly. But I want the court to know I paid their debt. All $890,000. I saved them from loan sharks who threatened their lives. Because regardless of everything, they're human beings who didn't deserve to be harmed by criminals. Whispers rippled through the courtroom. However, I also believe they deserve justice. What they did wasn't impulsive or a single mistake. It was calculated, repeated escalating. They tried to harm me 3 separate times with 3 different methods. I looked at Jessica. I hope prison teaches you what your father and I couldn't, that family isn't an ATM machine. That love doesn't mean you're entitled to someone else's life or money, and that actions always have consequences. The judge nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Your clemency in paying their debt while demanding justice is remarkable. Court officers came to take Jessica and Brandon away. As they passed my seat, Jessica whispered, "I love you, Mom." I didn't answer. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Mrs. Thompson, how do you feel about the sentence? I gave a brief statement. Justice has been served. Now I can finally grieve not just for my husband, but for the daughter I thought I had. As I walked down the courthouse steps with Emily, Jessica's screams of "Mom" fading behind us, I realized this chapter had finally closed. In 24 years, Jessica would be 59. Maybe then we could try again. But now I had a life to rebuild. Home was no longer the house I'd shared with Robert. Home was a small apartment above Thompson's Bakery where my niece Emily and her 2 children, Sophie, 5 and Lucas, 7, had brought warmth back into my life. In the months after the trial, I sold the house Robert and I had built together. Too many memories, too many ghosts. I moved into the renovated apartment above the main bakery location. Emily, whose mother, my sister-in-law, had died 3 years earlier, had been managing one of the bakery locations. After the trial, I transferred 3 of the 5 bakeries to her. "You've earned them," I told her. "You'll do wonderful things with them." She moved into the apartment with me and the children. Every morning now started the same way, Sophie and Lucas running into my room at 6 a.m. Grandma Maggie time to bake. We'd go down to the bakery kitchen and I'd teach them what Robert had taught me 40 years ago. This morning, Sophie asked, "Grandma, why do we have to wait for the dough to rise? Why can't we just bake it now?" I smiled, hands working the dough. "Good things need time, sweetheart. You can't rush them. They need time to grow." Lucas, kneading his own small portion, piped up. "Like how you waited for Mom Emily to learn the business before giving her the bakeries." Exactly like that. Those words echoed Robert's voice from 35 years ago, teaching me the same lesson. We'd also established the Robert's Second Chances Fund, a nonprofit helping people drowning in debt find legal solutions before turning to crime. In 6 months, we'd helped 47 families. One man sinking in gambling debt, just like Brandon had been about to rob a convenience store. We connected him with debt counselors, Gamblers Anonymous, and a repayment plan. He sent a letter, "You saved my life. I was about to throw it away for money. Thank you for showing me another path." That letter meant more than any bakery success ever had. One afternoon, while Sophie napped and Lucas played, Emily brought me mail. "Aunt Maggie, there's a letter from Victorville Federal Prison." My hands shook as I recognized the handwriting. Jessica's. Emily sat beside me. "You don't have to read it if you're not ready." I stared at the envelope for a long moment. "No, I need to." The letter was 4 pages carefully handwritten. "Dear Mom, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it." She wrote about prison, the reality, the harshness, the fear. "I'm in therapy twice a week. Dr. Martinez helps me understand how resentment became entitlement, how desperation became something evil. A revelation. Dad tried to warn me about Brandon's gambling 2 years before he died. I refused to listen. If I had..." She'd started teaching GED classes to fellow inmates. "Helping them learn makes me feel human again, like I have value beyond the terrible things I did. I think about you every day, Mom, about the soccer games you missed because you were building a future for us. Now I understand you weren't absent because you didn't love me. You worked because you loved me too much and wanted me to have everything." I reread Dad's old letters to you. The prison chaplain helped me get copies. In one letter, when I was 10, Dad wrote, "Maggie works so hard because she wants Jessica to have choices we never had." I never understood until now. I don't know if I'll ever deserve to be your daughter again, but I'm trying to become someone Dad would be proud of, someone you might be proud of someday. If in 24 years when I'm released, you don't want anything to do with me, I'll understand. But if there's even a small chance, I'll wait. I'll be better. I promise. I love you. Sorry can't cover what I did, but I am sorry. Jessica. I folded the letter carefully, tears streaming. Emily asked softly, "What will you do?" I looked at the letter, then at the framed photo on my desk, Robert and me on our wedding day, young and hopeful. I don't know yet, but I have 24 years to think about it. I placed the letter in a small wooden box I'd bought for this purpose. On the lid, I'd had engraved Jessica, maybe someday. Just then, Sophie ran in. "Grandma, the bread timer, the bread is ready." I smiled, wiping my tears. "Let's get the bread then, sweetheart. Good things are always worth waiting for." That evening, after Emily put the kids to bed, I stood at the apartment window looking down at the bakery. Below the neon sign, Thompson's Bakery and Cafe glowed warmly. Customers came and went, laughing, living their lives. I'd lost one daughter, but gained a family I could trust. Emily, Sophie, and Lucas had filled holes in my heart I thought would never heal. And someday, maybe in 24 years, maybe never, there might be room for Jessica again, but not today. Today I had fresh sourdough in the oven, grandchildren who needed me, and a life worth living. And that was enough. Looking back now, 6 months after that night on Waikiki Beach, I still ask myself, how did I miss the signs? The truth is I didn't miss them. I ignored them. Robert tried to warn me. The estrangement that lasted years should have told me something. Jessica's sudden warmth after his death, appearing exactly when there was money to inherit, that should have been a red flag waving in my face. But I was lonely. I was grieving. And I wanted so desperately to believe my daughter still loved me. That's the lesson I want to share with you today, especially in these family drama stories we hear everywhere. Love doesn't make you blind. Loneliness does. My advice: don't be like me. If someone who's been distant for years suddenly becomes your best friend right after a spouse dies, or you come into money, ask yourself why. Not with anger, with honesty. Are they here for you or for what you represent? I've heard so many grandma stories since mine went public, stories of elderly parents being manipulated, isolated, or worse, by their own children. And the common thread in all these grandma stories: we all ignored the warnings because we couldn't bear the thought that our own family would harm us. Here's what I learned the hard way. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by loyalty, by honesty, by showing up when there's nothing to gain. Emily, my niece, had been quietly managing one bakery, never asking for recognition, never demanding anything. She showed up to Robert's funeral and held my hand. She called every week just to check in, even when Jessica hadn't spoken to me in months. That's family. Jessica and Brandon. They were strangers wearing familiar faces. And here's the hardest truth I had to accept: I enabled it. By never setting boundaries. By letting Jessica's resentment fester without addressing it. By working so hard to provide for her that I forgot to just be with her. I'm not saying I deserved what happened. No one deserves to be harmed by their own child. But I do take responsibility for the relationship I failed to build, for the conversations I avoided, for using work as an excuse not to show up at her soccer games. Those family drama stories you see online, they don't start with poison or cliffs or hired contractors. They start with small distances that grow into canyons over years. So here's my advice, especially to others sharing their own grandma stories. 1. Set boundaries. Love doesn't mean unlimited access to your bank account or blind trust. 2. Pay attention to patterns, not words. Actions reveal character. Words hide it. 3. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I forgave Jessica. I even paid her debt to save her life. But I also held her accountable. Both things can be true. 4. Build relationships that aren't transactional. Love shouldn't come with a price tag. If it does, it's not love. And finally, and this is something I pray about every night, trust God's wisdom when He shows you who people really are. The Bible says, "You will know them by their fruits." I ignored the fruits because I was clinging to the roots. Today, Sophie and Lucas call me Grandma Maggie. They help me bake bread every morning. Emily and I run the bakeries together. We've helped 47 families through Robert's Second Chances Fund. I lost one daughter, but I gained a family built on truth instead of obligation. That's not a happy ending. It's a real ending. And sometimes that's enough. If you've lived through similar family drama stories, you're not alone. There are more of us than you think. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're in a similar situation, please don't wait for the third attempt. Trust your instincts. Set boundaries. Choose safety over guilt. Final note. This content contains dramatized storytelling elements for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the lessons and messages are entirely useful. If this style doesn't suit you, that's okay. Please seek content that better fits your needs.